somebody that's already dead? How are we gonna kill somebody that's already dead?
It's because of men like you that all must be destroyed. It's because of men like you that all must be destroyed. None of those risks have been seen, at least not by anyone who still remains alive.
Hi, everybody. Hear me okay? Looks like I'm only coming in side. No, if both sides of the speakers? I don't know. Channel. Cool. All right, let me see if I fix that. Sorry about that. Weird. Things. Okay, turning that on instead and shutting that off. Can you hear me okay now? Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2. It must be perfect. Everything must be perfect. Cool. Okay. Sorry about that. I'm an amateur. Rank amateur when it comes to this kind of stuff. In stereo. Anyway, thank you everybody for coming today. Welcome to X Studios Explaining. I just came up with that like 5 minutes ago, and it's dumb. I love it. So is basically what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be deep diving a little bit into my favorite little piece of gear, the Synthstrom Deluge. As you can see by my inappropriate rubbing of this thing, I'm a big fan of it. The track I just played to intro everything is a track that I wrote in 45 minutes in a garage at a hospital waiting for someone to get a test done. So that happened. And kind of gives you an idea of how cool and powerful this little guy is on its own. So let's talk a little bit about the hardware and everything like that. To get started, I feel like I'm doing an actual like explanation of things. So little box, size of my hand, size of the Deluge, and my hands are about, okay size here. Here's a lighter. You can see this thing is not big. This thing is pretty damn small. You can fit it in a bag. And if you decide to do that, I definitely recommend getting a deck saver for that. They do make deck savers for the Deluge. Thusly, goes right over it. Boom, throw it in your bag. You're good to go. It's lovely. Little teeny tiny buttons. We'll talk more about the little teeny tiny buttons in a little bit. But things made out of metal. Wooden end cheeks. I do love the term end cheeks. You've got a fairly decent amount of I/O on the back. You have a USB port, which you can also power it through, which is what the USB port is doing today. You have regular power as well. You have to excuse the Streamlabs announcements. I think it's probably still going to tell us that it's SynthFest. It's not. You also have a clock input. You have gate output. You have 4 different types. You can switch between 5 volt and 12 volt. You have 2 CV outs. You have MIDI in and out. The out can also be used as a through if need be. It automatically switches. You have output left and right for audio, 1/4 inch. You have an 1/8 inch jack input for your headphones, or output rather. You have a line in, which is also a 1/4 inch. And you have this gain switch over here, which this gain switch is for. There is a built-in speaker in here. According to the manual, it's for emergency use only because it sounds like complete garbage. And I think they know that. I think they just put that on there in case you wanted to, I don't know, you wanted to be sad or something and you wanted to listen to that badly. And then there is also a SD card slot in here too, which is expandable to whatever size SD card you want to put in. I have 128 gig in there right now, but any size you want to. Information tray, yes. To answer your question is, can you send out MIDI on all 16 channels on the output? And the answer is yes, you can. And I'll show you how the MIDI is set up on here and how that works. It's actually pretty slick and it's ridiculously simple. The trick with this little guy is understanding that pretty much how things work in one area are going to work in all the rest of the areas. And I think that's really one of the strengths about how this works is just that. There's a section on their forums that is basically, I think it's called the challenge. And the challenge is when you get your Deluge, you go on the forum, and in the first 2 hours, you post what you've put together. Because it's really that simple to use. And it looks kind of complex, and it looks a little bit complicated. And we'll kind of go into that a little bit more. So I/O on that, and then we have our cool little knobs. These knobs do things. Thank you, Dan Kushner. It does pull out the heart plugs, doesn't it? Some of these are dedicated controls, like obviously the output level is a dedicated control. The tempo and swing is a dedicated control. These guys are like soft knobs, so it depends on what button is pushed up here. And these are navigation. These are navigation. That is navigation, rather. You got these cool little rubbery buttons. And then you've got the central area, which is the pads, which is they do not have any kind of velocity sensitivity or anything like that. They are switch on-off switches, basically. That's kind of the hardware. And I did mention the screen, which is really just for LCDs, or LEDs, I should say. And here, this is how I can zoom in on things. Isn't that great? I'm so dumb. Same feel as a modem. I'm not sure because I don't have one. It is a similar feel to the buttons on any poly-end piece of gear. If that helps at all, they're just rubber buttons that do have some give. Thank you. It's kind of basically they're just rubber buttons. You can see that on the pads there is these little, this is actually text, unfortunately. Nothing will allow you to read these things correctly unless you're actually sitting here. This is how you get around into the synthesis. That's how you get around into effects programming. All that stuff, as well as like has a little keyboard for typing in characters in there. Sample editing and everything like that is all handled in that world. So it's no longer B flat. Please ignore that. Sorry, I had to turn that back off because that was going to bug me. So, Dan Kushner has been reading way too much Dune and watching way too much Dune and seeing too many Dune memes online, which is beautiful. Honestly, it is. Uncle Thumpy, quick mention about the community that is involved, and this is really kind of a cool thing. They are an extremely community-minded group. The company is like the owner is always like in communication with folks, and like the PR guy, the marketing dude is always in communication with folks through their Facebook. A good Facebook page, unlike most of Facebook, is actually useful. They do releases of public betas and stuff like that. And if something breaks on this thing, because they're based in New Zealand, so sending it out and shipping it back, if you have the wherewithal and skill, they'll send you the pieces parts and you put it together yourself. It's very easy to open up. You just have little screws on here, pop the knobs off, and there it is. This whole thing also has a battery built into it. So like I said, it's being powered through USB, but I can unplug the USB and we'll have about 6 hours of battery life on this thing before it's time to charge it again. And the battery inside of it is the same thing that's in a vape thing, whatever you call those things, smokable hard drive. I don't know what the hell you want to call those things, but it's one of those little batteries, and you can swap it out when it starts to die, and they're about like $20, I think. I don't know. I haven't bought one yet because this thing has not died yet. So that's kind of a light overview on hardware as far as that's concerned. So what is the Deluge? Is it a synthesizer? Yes. Is it a sequencer? Yes. Is it a sampler? Yes. Is it a groove box? Yes. Can you use it as a thumper to make sure the sandworms don't come to you if you are walking without rhythm? Yes, you can do that for that as well, Dan Kushner. Can it do the dishes? No, unfortunately not. But otherwise, it's pretty damn handy. So let's kind of go into this a little bit, and I'm going to go into it by... I was going to kind of go through the song and take it apart, but it's actually not as exciting. It's not a very exciting thing. It's still a sketch. So I'm just going to create a brand new song. Shift new. I can't even remember how to do this. It's been a long time since I've messed with this thing in this kind of regard. Actually, I did make a explaining. There it is. Track. Okay. Painting. Yes, I'm not gonna paint the Deluge. I will paint your brain with knowledge if you want, or some kind of joke therein. Okay, so on the Deluge, you have different modes on here. You have, and these buttons are right up here. I don't think that That makes it even worse. Fuck it. Okay, not using that one. So you have these 4 little buttons right below the LED. You have a synth, a kit, MIDI, and CV. And that's basically the style of track that you want to create. So if I just go in here and tap an empty slot on this guy here, by default, the synth light is lit. I can go in here and I can select kit, I can select MIDI, or I can select CV. That's pretty much, and how they work, it doesn't matter how that works. Once you punch in your sequence, then you can switch it to kit, you can switch it to MIDI, you can switch it to CV, and it will send out through those channels. So it's pretty handy if you are sitting on your desert island or in the middle of the desert and you're trying not to walk without movement or walk without rhythm. So you just end up sitting there in your frem tent with your still suit on. God, it's really difficult to keep up with these Dune quotes. I'm so sorry. So you're hanging out in your frem tent with your still suit on, and you want to work on some music and stuff like that. You can program everything on the built-in synth, and then later on, when you're back at your seat, you can plug in like your CV or your MIDI, and you can use the sounds on your external gear. So this is a nice little sketch pad. It's kind of handy. It is, in fact, Mutation Morum. It is a magic black box. It's fantastic. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to kind of show you what I mean by this. So I have currently a synth loaded up in here, and it's just like the generic synth that comes with it, which is not a very exciting sounding thing, but it's all good. So I'm going to turn that down a little bit, and I'm going to literally just punch in some notes on here. You can see that these, when you punch these in, they represent notes on the keyboard. You can also use these to pre-play it, and it will show you on the screen what note that is. You can hear that it's actually in a scale. And you can change those scales pretty easily, which is kind of nice. You have the scaling button right there, and you can change those to whatever scale you want to, and whatever root note you want to. And you can literally, you can record with this only if you want to. You can punch in stuff like this, and then there's a keyboard mode, which I'll show you in a little bit. So if I hit play right now, you're going to have this with all the drums and stuff like that. I'm actually going to mute those out here real quick. We can just mute them back in that view, back into our clip. So exciting. All right, so that's cool. Go us. So far, so good. But I want to put that on something else, so I'm going to grab my... these little guys here to plug them into my no coast. I'm going to plug the gate. And CV. And now if I switch this over to CV and hit play, you won't hear anything because I think I put them in backwards. Let's try it again. This time with feeling. Cool. It still doesn't work. Oh, it's because it's on the wrong channel. Same thing with MIDI. So if I just plug in a MIDI port on there, which is a regular size MIDI connector, by the way, and just switches over to MIDI, tell it what channel you want that MIDI to be, and it will play that channel. Easy peasy. Now, interestingly enough, one of the things you can do with this, with the MIDI, is you can plug in you can go through USB. You can also plug in a USB hub, and it will host through the USB connector. So you'll need like an adapter to get that working correctly. But once you have that going, then you can plug in any USB MIDI device, and it will detect them automatically, and you can tell it which device you want to send it to. So you basically have a MIDI through box of USB coming right off of this thing. So you can say, I want this to go to the Peak, I want this to go to the Hydra, or whatever other pieces of MIDI gear you want to. You can just plug them into a powered USB hub, and it will detect those and allow you to do that kind of thing, which is really, really slick, because you can do all kinds of weird hub-based kind of stuff. So you can have like a piece of gear that has a USB cord going into it, and then you can send out 16 channels from this thing. Or however you want to handle that kind of stuff. And you can also send things out through CV and MIDI at the same time, obviously, that kind of stuff. But that MIDI thing is actually, it's a newer thing that they put into the firmware on here. is the ability to use the MIDI, a USB hub, to plug in as many devices as you want to and do this kind of crazy shit with, which I think is pretty darn neat. I was going to set that up, but I ran out of time, I ran out of space, and I ran out of shits. Which, you know, let's face it, that's a thing. So, so we're talking a little bit about how you can play this thing and everything like that. Back to CV. So again, this is an area that you can play in, that you can just play it as a scale, so that way you're never playing the wrong note, which I do this a lot, because I am a horrible keyboard player, and I'm even more horrible about trying to figure out what notes I'm playing. So there's that. So I use this a lot, and I can go in and I can change the scaling and everything like that. Where is the scale button? I can't remember. God, it's been too long since I've done this. Oh, scale. So that's turned off the scale, and it's just like going right at the keyboard. It's set to majors right now. I can't remember doing this. Lordy. There we go. So I'm changing it by hitting Shift and Scale, and I can change all the different things to the different scales: Phrygian, Dorian, Lydian. So it gives you a lot of options as far as how you want to play that over there, which is nice. You can also hit this little button here. There's a little keyboard logo right there. Yeah, Uncle Thuppy, this is where I have to jump into. Can you turn the main grid into a grid of notes for playing similar to other grid-based control surfaces like Launchpad Pro, etc.? Not required, just curious. Yes, you can. And by pushing that little button right there, it now turns it into the same style of layout that's on like the Synthstrom. I can't remember what that system is called off the top of my head. Some kind of morphic kind of thing, where like the lighter keys in this case is the root note, in which case is C, and then each of these is a whole note from there, and then these are the black keys basically. Which is nice because you can play chords on there if you need to. This is a mono synth, it's not going to play chords, but if I go to synth mode. Boom, done. You can record like that if you want to. And that's, again, that's pretty darn handy. It takes a little bit of getting used to play like this because it's not a, regular keyboard, but once you get your head around it, it actually makes a lot of sense, at least to me. It's kind of like more like playing a guitar wherein your chords are going to, like the fingering on the chords are going to be the same no matter where you move your hand. 2 notes an octave apart. You can also play right here and right here. Sure, no problem, Uncle Thumpy. And thank you for having a name that's Uncle Thumpy, because I like saying Uncle Thumpy. I will always call you by Uncle Thumpy. Cool. I'm glad it's the same layout that you're used to, because that makes that a little bit easier. This is kind of like the weird part that folks have a tough time, like when I'm streaming and stuff like that. Like, how do you know what you're playing and everything like that? As long as you know what your root note is, and you can easily count up from there or down from there. Which I'm usually playing in, my root note's usually C, because I have zero talent when it comes to music, except what I make up on the fly on this stuff. So, it does not do the notes on the scale in the grid, but it will do the notes in the scale over here. So if I turn back off, oh wait, actually, it's a good question. Oh, it will do that. Hey, look at that. So it will actually set those scales up for you, John. So it will relight based upon what scale you're playing in. Yep. So you can see that is, when it has a little dot next to it, that means that that's the sharp or the flat. we discovered something new. So shift scale will change those scales even in the keyboard mode, which is pretty darn slick. I usually do in majors. So thanks for the question. Yeah, well, I'm loving this thing more and more. Usually what I just do is I just get out here and I just play it along this area, and then I can use the up and down section to, see how the light's changing there? This is actually moving it up and down on the octave-wise. And you can record with using this only. You can record with the keyboard mode, or you can punch in the notes on the grid if you want to. It's entirely up to you how you want that to happen. I'll go over here. I'm going to jump into this area, maybe. No one knows where that went. Okay, this is the CV section, I think. Let's turn off our mutes. Still no idea. Cool. Okay, over here, this is our drum kit. So you can see the second light is lit, and right underneath it says kit. The drums are sample-based. Yeah, I like the window shade effect too. It's really handy. I like how it loads those things in there. So, but yeah, the drums are all sample-based. Yeah, obviously you can create a synth drum and everything like that. And I think there's a way to load it in as a kit. You can save it as a kit, but I don't know how off the top of my head, unfortunately. I think that might be something you have to do in the actual patch in the XML that is created when you create a patch, because this thing it's all XML stuff. Weird, right? So let's go into our drums here, and let me just solo the drums. So here's my drums. So I loaded this up like this because I wanted to kind of give an example of how things like what would be p-locking, parameter locking in Electron world, as well as chants and stuff like that. It works very similarly to how an Electron piece of gear works, and we'll just talk about that real quick. So for instance, right now I have this kick coming in on the second measure. These two claps are alternating on the measures and stuff like that, and I also have some effects that are automating themselves as well. And you can see how this area here is lighting up at certain points. That's when an effect is being triggered. So let's kind of go through, and I'm going to delete these. You can hear that one still has the effect on there. So how do I get rid of that? Well, I can just clear it out if I want to. I can just delete it, or I can just hold it down and just turn the knob down. Now it's back to normal. Like I said, it's pretty simple to do. Like my 4/4 kicks, the grid kind of shows you where the quarter notes are. That makes that a little bit easier to slap together. Oh, clap your cheeks there, Dan Kushner. So our rockin' quarter, kick. Yep, Jeff for real, there is a stutter, and I'll show you the stutter in a moment, because that's kind of a fun effect. So I can just hold this down and then turn this knob, and now it gives me how often I want those to show up. You can do it like by measure. You can do it by percentage. And that's it. You can't do things like if you hit the fill button like you can with Electron gear and stuff like that. But it's still, pretty cool how it works. You can do the similar kind of thing for effects. So if I want to like have this kick drum delay, I can push the delay button right here, and I can turn that up. And I can also like adjust how I want the delay to time. So you almost kind of get a stutter effect on there, but it's not quite a stutter effect, and we'll go into actual doing stuttering here in a minute. So I'm going to throw in, some highs. And these had effects on them from beforehand, so you can see how those are affecting. So I have this selected right now, and if I wanted to do a stutter, there's actually a stutter button right here. And how that works is you just hold it down and then you turn this little knob like that. Actually, no, you don't hold it down. I was lying. Let's try that again. You push down the button. So yeah, you can stutter things by track if you want to, and you can also stutter it by the entire song if you need to as well. However you want to do it, you can do it by item in there. So if I go and hit the select for the kick, kind of gives you an idea as far as that kind of thing is concerned. I do like the stutter effect on there. It's a really fun thing to play with. It's kind of funny because they did some goofy, weird shit in here that I think it might be tied with the stutter effect, but they're like the tempo on this thing. Your tempo variance, you can bring it down to below 1 beat per second, all the way down to 0.001. Sander, thank you for the follow. Literally, this is going to play 0.001 seconds per beat. What? You can bring it up higher. So we can bring it to 1 second per beat. That might be more than 1 second. Might be 1 minute. Yeah, 1 beat per minute. I'm sorry, I'm done with BPM. But you can hear this delay is working with that too. You can bring it up. $10,000 beats per minute. It's not B flat. But yeah, so it's kind of crazy what you can yeah, and I think that they have the tempo and the stutter both like tied together because it's very similar kind of feeling to it. It's probably a programming decision, but it's pretty funny that they'll go that as far as your tempo is concerned. So if you want really low tempo, or really high tempo, it was in fact a Spivey meatball sack, like Mark Spivey, like from Dead Voices on Air. Sorry, Uncle Thumpy, and sorry, Uncle Thumpy's dog. Can we call it? Is a dog named Doggy Thumpy? Can it be? The whole Thumpy family. Yeah, sorry about the harsh noise there, pup. So tempo is crazy with this thing. Bubba Thumpy. Bubba Thumpy. can see all the tracks will come into play to the rhythm. You can hold down Shift and do it, and they'll immediately play instead. Like that. Otherwise, they will wait until the next come around to pick up. Track creation, again, it's a pretty simple process. Works across the board with your synths, your kits, your MIDI, or your CV. Let's talk a little bit about programming this thing. And this is the part where it gets okay. Programming this thing is not the easiest from a synth standpoint. No offense to it; it's a great piece of gear, but this is probably the least bit that's fun. I'm going to go ahead and nuke out the sound that's in that track. Come on. There we go. So there's our waveform. Everything from there is on these little buttons, and this is where it's kind of difficult to show. I was hoping I could magnify it and make it look more doable, but it's not. Even with the light on, you still can't read a bloody thing on there. So this is when you definitely need your reading glasses. So how things are laid out as far as the synth programming is concerned is all these little words all over everything, and these are all broken down into sections. So you have your sample input. So if you're using a sample, an audio sample, you'd do all the adjustments over here. Oscillator 1, oscillator 2. Hey, Act Detect. FM mod 1, FM mod 2, all the master programming. And then to start splitting itself up as well, you have your distortion effects over here. You have any of the voice kind of effects like polyphony, priorities, detuning, all that kind of stuff over here. Your envelopes, so this is your attack, decay, sustain releases to make things sound prettier. Your low pass filter, your high pass filter. You have two envelopes on here. You have a side chain effect on here for obviously side chaining kind of stuff. Bass and treble EQ, arpeggiator programming, two LFOs, which are assignable pretty much to everywhere. You also have these mod effects here as well. So you have like your reverb, delay kind of things, or what's going on there. And then you also have LFO destinations, envelope destinations. I'm not sure what XY does. And then you have your mod sources as well. So you can do bring in your mods from different inputs and stuff like that, or different locations on here. And, your modulation matrix places where I think the destinations are aftertouch, velocity, random notes, sidechain. Those are actually something like inputs. LFO 1, LFO 2, envelope 1, and envelope 2. So you can make all those adjustments in the pads. You also do have 3 customizable button areas. And I say 3 because each button counts as 2 different things based upon if you're turning the right knob, the top knob, or the bottom knob. So you have the custom 1, custom 2, and custom 3. And you can assign any of these things to those knobs if you want to. So if you already have like a low pass filter going on here and you want to add a high pass filter because you're stupid or whatever, you can just add that into that and go to town. Or you mess with the pulse width on your oscillator or what have you. So oscillators, yay. I'm going to go ahead and hit the type. So square, A square. Sawtooth, analog sawtooth, and regular sawtooth. They don't sound too much different. They're all emulators. Sample base, so you can load a sample into this part here, and so that way you can use a sample as your oscillator source. Audio input, so you can bring in your audio in as an oscillator, which I've done before with like when I'm doing my ambient outdoors backyard stuff. I'll just use one of the oscillators as a microphone input on here, because a microphone on here can get really, really stupidly sensitive, and so it picks up a lot of stuff from the outside world. Sine wave, triangle, and back to square. Yeah, hello feedback. I'm not actually, when I'm doing the outside stuff, it hasn't really fed back too much because I'm wearing headphones, and but if you're not wearing headphones and you have like big speakers going on, you turn that mic on, it will fucking murder you. There's a low and high gain switch on there for that very reason. So watch out for the fucking murders. So everyone's favorite square wave. I love analog square wave because it's like doesn't make too much of a difference. Your pulse width. Oh, Uncle Thumpy, yeah, that's how you can murder people, by plugging it in to a live show with like through the PA. Yeah, it gets painful. This thing is fed, like it has almost fed back before and everything like that. And when you're wearing headphones, it becomes an amazing experience, especially if you have like your filters like set really, really to tin foil mode. It gets a little bit nuts. So doing that, we can do the envelope here. So I can change the envelope, and you got to push each button and then turn a knob. So it's kind of like more like using a computer. It's not like as immediate, unless you are using the knobs that are already assigned on here, which I could for the attack and stuff like that. So I can actually go up to the attack and release button right here. Give it some delay. Filter. I'm going to turn off the delay here real quick. You can hear what the filter sounds like here. I feel like there's a little bit of stepping in there, but I'm not sure. Yeah, there's some stepping in there. It gets really resonaty though. You can change the type of filter just by clicking on that button, or clicking on the knob rather. Moderates in depth. Panning. Levels. Cutoff and resonance. Can add distortions to that if we need to. It's called decimation. Bit crush. Saturation. Clicking on here with like the other effects will allow you to change the type of effect it is. So small reverb, medium reverb, large reverb. That's handy, but you can also go into, excuse me, you can also go into the actual reverb programming with the shift and pushing the little buttons on here as well. So shift and amount, I can turn up the reverb amount, turn up the pan, width, dampening, room size. I'm huge. Same thing with delays and stuff like that as well. I can go into my delay. Make it an analog delay. The delay is really, really sensitive when it comes to feedbacking. Little dabble do ya. I hear a lot of negative reviews about the synth on here. People think it's a little bit wimpy, it's not great, it's not all that. But I don't know, I really like the synth on here. I kind of like the way it sounds, especially when you get it kind of dirty sounding and like Uncle Thumpy's saying, it's kind of Philip Glassy kind of sounding. It's really nice for some really pretty pads and love. Who doesn't love pretty pads? But I've actually had pretty good luck with pretty much all the stuff that I put on here, as far as like sounds and stuff like that is concerned. If you are going to pick up a Synthstrom Deluge, I would highly recommend picking up the Boards of Deluge sound packs. These things are created by some guy in some probably castle in space or something like that, and he creates the most amazing sounding patches for the Deluge, and it's all just using the synths on the Deluge. This dude really knows what he's doing as far as programming this thing and stuff like that. He's absolutely fantastic. There's also a guy named Rephaser who also does excellent patch work for this stuff, and he does a lot more sample based things as well, but not all the time. So he's got a good variety of things as far as that's concerned. And let's talk a little bit about patch management, because this is the other big pain in the ass about this thing. Let's face it. Patch management on here is literally, how do you go through your patches? You turn this knob. Yep, that's what you do. And that's, the patches are called. Some of them do have names, but they start with numbers usually. Oh my God. And how many patches can you store on this thing? As many patches as your SD card can hold. So you can see, like, that's the name of a patch. Did you catch all that? These are the Rephaser patches. I think these are all sampled off of the Analog 4 by Electron, if I'm not mistaken. This is an arpeggio of hi-hats, which I think is kind of a cool way of doing that. Anyway, I'm not going to go through all 800 patches that I currently have on here. I just want to kind of give it like some examples of like, you know, some of the craziness that people can make on this thing, just with like. He wants to build up my tune. Wow. If only you knew. It's using a lot of like the delays and stuff like that. Very pretty. He wants to build up a tune. Okay. Let's build up a tune. So I'm going to turn on my tempo and we'll make it like 100 beats per minute. And so there's a track. Boom. This guy here, I'm going to turn this into a kit. And I'm going to do something stupid with that. You can turn on and off the quantization if you want to. I usually keep mine on because I just off the quantization. You can also adjust how much quantization you want to use. You can also swing it and everything like that. All that is in the system. Because I generally don't use it, I don't know too much about it, but you can just hold down the shift and swing, and it will swing that music for you a little bit, or crazy amounts. Turn off that. You can see it's playing everything by whatever scale, whatever, however long you wrote it, how many measures you wanted to put in there. So this one's just going to keep repeating as it comes back around. So each track can be however long you want it to make, and you can also go through and you can edit that and make them shorter if you want to. So if I want to go into the drums and I wanted to hold down shift and then turn this guy, and I can make it a little bit sloppy. And I can also change the swing. It's kind of a fun little oof. So I can go through here and I can kind of refocus how big I want to see things by holding this down. So it's 16th notes, 30-second notes. I'm going to bring it down to make this a little bit. I can hold this and I'm basically making that timeline going out 4 measures. And then I can go in and click this down and bring it in so I can see things a little bit by quarter notes. And by holding down the first button and then pressing the last button I want to play, it'll just create that pad. And I can also, do chords if I need to. You can just go through and you can find another kit if you rather. That sucks. Uncle Thumpy, yes you can. That's better. You're gonna bring down the level on that. Yeah. Oh, Doodoo Lord, never get rid of the Deluge. It is pretty amazing. It is an amazing synth. So, but I mean, if you're just doing stuff in software, then I mean, I don't know. I don't use whatever you got, right? But yeah, if you want to do things, if you want to record things in non-scale, you can do it a couple of ways, Uncle Thumpy. Go back into another track here. I can just go into here and I can just play however I want to, off scale or on scale. If I'm using the keys over here, I can just turn off the scale mode, and they'll just play like black keys do. Scales are easy if you're a non-player like I am because I get lazy. But yeah, you can turn those off and on pretty simply. Doesn't do micro tuning yet. One of the things about these cats that is really cool, and what I really love about them, is their ability and desire and excitement about releasing firmware every couple months. That was my long-winded speech of saying they put firmware out all the time. Every couple months they do an update, and then at least twice a year they do bigger updates. I think this big thing that they're going to be doing is wavetable, and they're going to be doing MPE control, that kind of stuff. Those are the things that are going to be coming soon. Jamanam Music, Jamanam Music. Thank you for following. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's my little origami bird. I should put some incense in there and light it. Make it smell good. Especially with the music. It's very, chill. If you came here looking for bangers, I am gonna disappoint the hell out of you. It's weird because it's got a lot of flexibility and it's got a lot of limitations, but therein I think lies the strength of this thing. Is because, and I've become a big fan of working in limitations, and shrinking things down and stuff like that. Getting started with a lot of software synthesizers and stuff like that, having the ability to not have that stuff has been pretty cool with me. There we go. Now we'll make it nice and mellow in here. Yes. So some of the stuff that I have not touched on this thing, and a lot of the reason why I have not touched on this stuff is because I don't do it. And it's not like anything against it. I haven't really found a need to do certain things on this thing, but it does it. Yes, I stabbed it with incense. For instance, sampling. You can sample stuff on this thing. You can use it as a looper. So you can literally go in here and you can just have this going and I can loop it, or bring an audio from here and I can loop it into this thing and I can fuck with that while it's still playing in the background, that kind of stuff. I haven't really messed with the sampling features on here. I'm not much of a sampler person. I mean, I'm fine with sample playback and everything like that, but I'm not really a sampler kind of guy. But you can go in. It's kind of weird how they do this, right? So I can go Shift Browse and go into a. I don't know what it's doing right now, honestly. I think it's looping. Yeah, no fucking idea. You plug in an analog keyboard into it and record it, which you play as MIDI. Yes, you can. You can plug in. It does have audio. It does have a MIDI input. It has a USB as well. You can RTFM as well. But yeah, you can plug in any USB controller, any MIDI MIDI controller. I've used it with the what's that little guy called? The Arturia Microlab, which is almost the same size as this thing, and it works fine. Plus, you can go in and you can assign the knobs and stuff like that as well, which is nice. Because you can, if you have like enough knobs and stuff like that, you can take all these little synth controls and you can assign them to knobs. And then that way, instead of going here and using this interface, which works fine for it being so small, you can just turn the knobs and stuff and you can get the same kind of effects on it. I would use the Deluge for single purpose for a while, say as a sampler and sample sequencer. Could I make using it feel like a one-dimensional, one knob per function interface? Also, does it have waveform visualization of some kind, mainly for sample start? Act detect. Yes. The one knob per function interface, yeah, you can do something along those lines. If you're just using like you can basically assign it per track per knob. So if you're on track, you can have like one track with these knobs, another track with these knobs, that kind of thing. It's cool, but it's not. I think that's one of the things that they do need to work on a little bit more. Let's see. There's. Oh dear God. Nope. We can kind of see this. This right here is an example of how it shows your waveform visualization. I need to pull up a sample here real quick, and for that I do need a RTFM, right? Because I told you this was going to be awkward. They do have a beautiful manual that you can buy separately that SynthDog makes. That they just said, yeah, you can. SynthDog is now the guy who writes our manuals, and it's a really beautiful, very well laid out manual with all kinds of cool advice and stuff like that. All this is because they did firmware updates. Instead of buying a whole new manual, I just printed them out and stuck them in there, and that was probably the dumbest thing. It's a PDF for free. You can go and download it right now if you want to. If you want to buy it, the book is it's about, I think it's like $25 for the manual. But it's actually well worth it, because if you printed this thing in color and everything like that and had it bound, it's going to be about $45 to $50 to get that done. So I definitely would recommend that if you're going to get it, then if you want to get a printed copy of it, then I would definitely look into just getting them to print it for you. Plus, it's on nice paper. They did a really good job of putting it together. Plus, these guys really, they deserve all the money you can give them, honestly. A few months ago, they decided that they were going to. That's okay, Uncle Thump. You talk however you want to. I'm perfectly fine with this. A few months ago, they just announced that they were upping the price for this guy by $100. It was going for $8.99 US. It's now going for $9.99 starting in February. So if you want to get one soon. And some people really didn't like the fact that they were going to raise the price on it, but they have added so much stuff into this thing since version 1. And they've really become a completely different piece of gear from when it first came out. And it does so much, still under $1,000 for as much as this thing does. It's very much, in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinions, it's so worth it. It's so many features. And then when they come out with like version 3, and some more of these buttons, which some of these are blank, will have more features. You spend the $30, they send you a new case, and you pop the old case off and you put the new one on. Or you can get a magnetic overlay for I think it's like $10 or $15, and then just slap that on there, and then you're good to go. But I love that they do that kind of thing. That they can, it's that wide open that they can keep on adding shit to this thing. Doo Lord, yeah. It is nuts how crazy what they put this thing together in there. And Act Detect, it does so much. I am considering buying it as a sampler and using it for whatever more in the future. Yeah, I really I bought this thing thinking I'm just going to use it as a straight up sequencer. And I've since now used it for everything known to mankind. It's like my main piece of gear now. I love it so much. It's almost inappropriate. So I'm looking at the manual right now, and they're talking about the, you can kind of see here, they show you, this is how it draws the waveforms on here. And you can edit your loops and everything like that. You can adjust, obviously, the waveform length. You can, I'm just going to go through this a little bit because I'm not a sampling person, so not yet. I might start doing it next year. Who knows? So you can record an audio sample into a new kit. You can do it into an existing kit. Input monitoring, blah, blah, blah. You can slice it across a new kit too. So you can actually dump a loop in here, and you can slice the loop, and you can assign it per button. I think it looks like it's up to 8 slices as of right now. They might make that bigger. You can also sample it into a synth instrument, which I've loaded some of those before, for like strings and pianos and stuff like that. And you can zoom into that waveform as well. It gets pretty confusing pretty quick because, again, you're looking at, your screen is literally this as far as that's concerned, which is 16 by 8 squares. Your resolution is 16 by 8 dots per inch. Information tray says I want to use it as a couch synth sketchpad loop player for my song stubs and as my main sequencer in my jam rig. That's pretty much what I've been doing with it. Yeah, you can do sample editing on it. It's just not very elegant. I know a lot of people generally will just edit their samples on a computer and then just dump them into here. It's pretty simple to do. It accepts WAV files and stuff like that, and I think it will do the slicing and everything like that automatically as well. How many tracks in MIDI and CV can I sequence? Uncle Thumpy asks. I'm so glad you did ask that. You can. You have as many tracks as the CPU can handle. Voila. So, yeah. That's all there is to that. I don't know. It will if the CPU starts to slow down, whole thing will start to clunk up. They are constantly, with these firmware updates, they constantly make it more and more streamlined so it can handle a lot more stuff than it did before. But yeah, it'll do at least 16. I've seen people with like 32, 64 might be pushing it. It's funny because I'm pretty minimalist when it comes to music. Information tray, yeah, it says this seems like a device ripe for a Max nerd to do an editor for, especially for the synth programming. That might be the case. I know that people have already done certain things like being able to pull the XML files out of these and import them into, I think, Bitwig or Reaper. And then that way the tracks become separated out and everything. The downside to this thing is when you do want to dump this into a digital audio workstation on your computer or something like that, then you need to, you basically have to record it out track by track. That's what I had to do. But I'm sure someone might be working on a Max editor. I'm fine with just using Audacity and editing samples in it and then dumping it in that way. I've not done any sample input on here or looping or anything like that. I've seen some people use these with the guitars and stuff like that as a looper, and that's cool. I'm not a guitar player, so I don't, I'm not a looper. So as far as that kind of stuff is concerned, but my biggest exploration on this thing was at the last RPM challenge, which I'm totally going to plug RPM challenge. Battery life when on the couch with headphones and no connections. It's about 6 hours. I've used this on airplanes. It's not plugged into power right now. I unplugged the USB a while ago. And, yeah, it's got a 6-hour battery life. Crazy. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. RPM challenge, which you write an album in 28 days during the month of February. 10 songs, 30 minutes of music, 35 minutes of music, whichever comes closest to what you want to do. So I did the entire thing using the Novation Peak and the ASM Hydrasynth as all the sound sources that I did. And then I recorded them into the DAW once I wrote all the songs. But I wanted to really understand how the Deluge worked from a songwriting standpoint. So I figured the best way to do that was just to go fucking nuts and record an album on that. Uncle Thumpy Bandcamp link, please, for my RPM album. That would be Plasma Blackout. I'll type that into the chat here. There you go. And to give you an example, I did the last track that I did for that album. I had decided to write it with just the Deluge. And the idea was, before there was a pandemic, was I would just pick the damn thing up with just the audio plugged into it and walk around with it and let it go to town and like add stuff, flourishes if I wanted to. But I'll play that for you right now so that way you can hear what this thing sounds like as far as putting together a pretty basic song. And again, this song has 7 tracks because I'm pretty minimal as far as that kind of stuff is concerned. So here is Not Sorry, which was 100% Deluge. Obviously isn't mixed on the DAW. It doesn't have any of the fancy effects I put in later on or anything like that. This is just a raw track here. Thanks for buying the album. Kind of see how in the arranger view it now gives us like a timeline with the different tracks going vertical. Uncle Thumpy. Yeah, it is. It's very like kind of rudimentary looking and everything like that, but you can still go through and you can mess with things and stuff like that through this. There's this little affect entire button that you can push, and now I can go through and I can affect the entire track if I want to. I don't recommend doing that for very long. But even like doing my good old stutter effect. It's still not B flat. I need to turn that off. Anyway. Does sound kind of cool though. So this is the arranger view, which is what we've been looking at here this whole time, which basically just kind of shows how everything's working out here. If I click the song button, this actually breaks down all the different tracks that are playing right now. And you can see that even though I said it's 7 tracks, it is not all waved inside of the Deluge Atropius. They are still XML files. The sample-based stuff is WAV file, but otherwise it's XML data. That's basically writing your the parameters and stuff like that. So all the little red lights right now means things are muted, and you'll notice that over here on the left that all of these are one color except the bottom one. And the reason why is what happens is you create sections for like tracks and stuff like that. So if you have like a patch, you can switch to a different section and have it play something differently. That's kind of how it handles playing songs and stuff like that as far as that's concerned. So you create a different section and you put in different notes into that section and that kind of stuff. And you can arrange it so like playing live, kind of like how you can do with like Ableton Live, where you have scenes. You can basically use these sections as scenes and have it launching, you know, scene 1 or scene 2 and stuff, and it will change how things work out. So I can just click on one of these guys here and I can see what's going on there. Right now, obviously it's muted, but if I go back in there and look at the clip, so you can see that that's the first track there. It's a lot louder than what I played it because I played that on a keyboard as opposed to onto here, so I had velocity and stuff like that, so I was able to make it a little bit more tender. Their little drum loop. Again, straightforward 16 steps. Nothing too exciting. We're just kind of playing those into scenes and then bringing them in and out on the arranger view to create the song. So you can see that this is our drums and stuff like that, but there is a lot of each parts of the tracks are doing different probabilities and chances and doing triplets and stuff like that. And you can, it doesn't really see it here, but if I zoom in on the track itself, we're at 16ths here, but you can zoom in. Like the triplets and stuff like that are just basically just went in there and punched them in as triplets, basically. And triplets, it is a little bit different from the Electron workflow, but it has similar ideas. Especially like it's basically just a little bit more visual than the Electron workflow, but it has the same kind of thing. If I hold down something and turn a knob or whatever, so like if I go in here and you can see that right there, the automation on the resonance is going up and down because I literally was recording it, and as I was recording, I was turning the knob. I can also hold down a button, a note, and I can adjust the parameters for that particular note. So if I go into, we'll just say, let me create a new patch here. So here's a little synth. I'll play up. If I hold down this guy here, I can give it a percentage, or it'll play only every third here, and I can give it release on that one. I can take this note here, get some reverb. And I can also go in and I can record stuff as well. So if I want to do like how many parameter locks per step are possible there? As many as you want to put in. You can go and you can make it. You can change it everywhere you want to, as far as that kind of thing is concerned. It will not do the stutter as a parameter lock though, because that's something that you mess with. But I can go in and I can make everything. I think volume is. Yeah, volume is. Yeah, it don't care. Honey, it's like Honey Badger. It doesn't give a shit. So yeah, you can just let that go, and you can add as much insanity as you want to. Yeah. I don't know. I'm kind of running out of things to say about it. Like I said, I don't do the sampling stuff on here, but it does have the ability to sample. You can use it to control external gear. You can use the pads and stuff like that if you want to. I think you can probably teach it with the custom buttons. You can custom external CC. I've not done that before. When I was doing the stuff for Plasma Blackout with this, I was using an external keyboard to control everything. Indigo 420, thank you for the host. Appreciate it. Hope you're doing well. So yeah, that's kind of where we're sitting as far as this little guy is concerned. It does a hell of a lot. For such a little box, and I don't think I'm not using. I think I'm probably using 40% of what this thing is capable of doing right now, which is better than an Octatrack, which I think was only using 10% of what that thing can actually do. So I'll look at that as you know, I'm getting more comfortable with this guy. But kind of to review, you've got $899 for it right now, $999 starting in February. They're upping the price on it. You've got continuously updating firmware. You have USB, which you can also use as a USB host, so you can plug in multiple things through a USB hub, powered USB hub, and it will identify those things, audio coming in or MIDI coming in and MIDI coming out. So that makes that pretty handy, especially if you're using a Launchpad Mini. Information tray. You can also use a keyboard. You can use whatever you want to. I've controlled this with a Linstrument. I've controlled it with a Microlab. I've controlled it with all kinds of goofy stuff as far as that's concerned. CV gate and octave out. You can switch it between 5 volt and 12 volt on the gate out. which is handy as heck. MIDI in and out and through. It's an out through. Yeah, it's the incense. It's nothing else that's burning right now. I just lit incense because I had my little buddy. Audio output stereo, headphone jack, line in, and microphone built-in speaker. This thing is really, really fun. Like I said, this is probably my favorite little piece of gear. Runs on batteries. Has literally a vape battery in this thing that will let it run for 6 hours at a stretch. Doesn't tell you when it's going to run low though. So it's kind of like, oh, I think it actually does say low on there once the time comes. But yeah, does anybody have any questions? Because if not, then I'm going to go eat some lunch. And yeah. No. Where do you buy it, right? You can only buy it from one place, or two places, really. You can only buy it from synthstrom.com. synthstrom. They are a small company. I think there's only 8 people total that work there, and they're based out of New Zealand, but they're pretty quick about shipping this bad boy out. You can also get it on Reverb if you can find one used. I got mine used, and yeah, I mean those are your two places as far as where you can get them. They don't sell them in stores or anything like that. I think it's just because they have a really small distribution network, and again, it's interesting. It's an interesting model because it also allows them to have a lot more community because they know who has what. Which I think is kind of a slick thing too. They know people, kind of like by first name. If you go onto YouTube and just type in Synthstrom Deluge, you will find a lot of different shows and stuff like that of people using it in very different ways than what I'm using it for. I see artisanally made with free range plastics and metals, vegan, gluten-free rubber buttons. You have they're actually, I think at the end of the month, you cannot get them from Sweetwater. You can only get them from Synthstrom or if someone's selling it used. That's it. Ta-da. They're doing a music festival on YouTube. I think it's next week of people basically of pre-recorded shows of folks playing these things and stuff like that. And they do that every couple of months. They just released a record of people making music with the Deluge. Back in the spring, they were doing a world tour. They were going to do a world tour. I was actually going to play at the one in Chicago of Synthstrom Deluge people, where they were going all over the place, all over the world, and just like showcasing the local people playing this thing. Unfortunately, that whole got canceled. But yeah, check it out. Synthstrom, I think it's synthstrom.com. Or is it synthstromaudio.com? Just type Google search Synthstrom Deluge, and that will take you to the website and where to get it and stuff like that. It is an incredible piece of gear. It's a lot of fun, and everyone should get one for Christmas this year. So tell whoever it is that buys you things for Christmas each year that this is what you want. So let's see. Any other questions in the chat? Yes, buy all of them, Indigo 420. Otherwise, they will chop down a tree. Yeah, so that's kind of what's going on with this thing. As far as what's going on here, next week is Synthfest again, starting on Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, in the States, Black Friday everywhere else, and going on all weekend long. I will be playing bright and early Saturday morning at 7 a.m. Y'all are going to wake me up and make me play, because I don't know what time zones mean. I'm a moron. Actitech posted a link, synthfest.online. Check on out. It'll be great. Last time I made breakfast for everybody. I have some ideas about what I'm doing this time, but I'm not going to tell you. But it should be fun as well. So, is anybody on that we can raid to? Let's see here. There's the ASMR lady. There's Industrial DJ guy. And there's the owl house, which the owls aren't really doing much right now. So does anybody have anybody that I can raid over to before we all leave and go and do our thing? Otherwise, I'm going to probably shoot you all over to the ASMR lady or something like that. No. Is Scroll Music on? I didn't see him on the list. Weird. Oh. Oh, he just came on. That's why. All right, let's raid over to Squirrel. Was it 5QRL music? No. Learn to type. QRLMSIC. All right, we're going to raid over to Squirrel. Again, to everyone, thanks for watching. If you are on the Shrimp Guild Discord and you have more questions, or if you know me outside of here for anything and you want to ask me any questions, shoot me a message, shoot me an email, however you want to do that, and I'd be happy to at least try to answer. Again, thanks for hanging out with me, and we'll see you over at Squirrel's Place. Bye.